Hello and welcome back. Same day, I had to get the shirt off because it got really hot. It's cold outside, hot in here. We're going to talk about early development, and that's an important time. Uh, so again, like we noticed with uh, prenatal development, like problems in these early times can cause lifelong consequences. And I'm gonna not argue the science that emerged is consistent with that theme. Like the earlier the dysfunction or pathology, the more pervasive the effects. So let's jump in, and I'm going to share my screen, and let's just get into early brain development. And I have a few videos I've already checked, and they're not going to play again, just like the other one. I don't know what's happening. But I'm going to encourage you to watch these videos on epigenetics because this is, we talk about the battle between nature versus nurture, genetics versus environment. And epigenetics is actually above, over and above genetics. In fact, that's epi means above genetics. And so epigenetics is the study of how our environment actually influences our genes. So what we experience in life can actually flip on or off a gene expression as we develop it, as we develop. It could also flip on or off a gene that we would possibly pass on to our offspring. Please watch these videos. If they don't work, let me know and I'll release them within the modules. But these are important. These are important themes because this is something that's emerged since the year 2000 when we cracked I think it's 99, when we cracked the human genome. So this is really new science. This is within 25 years that this field of epigenetics is really, we've been able to understand, oh my gosh, our environment is actually impact the genes that are expressed. And that's all I'm gonna say. All right. Um, this goes into epigenetics, so telomeres, some I've heard it called telomeres. When your cells divide, you lose a piece of this telomere, and when cells start really going haywire, it means that the telomeres are probably really short, and now there's some changes and some errors that are passed along in genetic code when cells are dividing. So think about having like an injury or cut and how your cells like get injured and they regrow. I'd say there's probably some shortening of the telomeres that are involved in the regrowth. Stress can be really harmful to telomeres. Prolonged stress, cortisol. I can't stand that these aren't coming through. They kind of act like they're going to come through. Again, if these don't come through for you, please let me know. I will put the videos out there. There's a video link. I think that'll be easier. And so please pay attention to 33 minutes in, 48 minutes in, and 55 minutes in on that video link. All right. So again, after you digest some of this information, a good, this might be a really good discussion post this week. If you After you consider epigenetics, how does this deepen your understanding of nature versus nurture, genetics versus environment? I think that's what our discussion board is going to be. All right. So, why should we be concerned with neurology when talking about human development? Well, we are in psychology, and what's sitting on top of your shoulders is actually controlling everything that you're doing right now. That's all the thoughts you're having, all the physiological functions that you're having. This is your control center up here. So, if we're going to understand human psychology, human development, we, by gosh, better look at the development of the brain. and neurology. What we have found over the years is that some theories have been very significantly reinforced by our understanding of the brain and what's happening. And we've been able to get a pretty sophisticated look at the brain with our fMRI technology, functional magnetic resonance imaging, where we're able to, put somebody under a brain scan under a tube and see which areas of the brain are lighting up, are active when different activities are going on, with different emotions, different stressors, different things. It's really interesting to see what structures in the brain are responsible for what. So we kind of like Phineas Gage had the first like thing that went through the guy's like frontal lobe and changed his personality. So we don't have to really like go full Hannibal Lecter and cut off somebody's brain and like mess with it to figure out we have much more non-invasive like techniques to figure out what's happening in the brain and what areas are responsible for different functions. So, thinking cerebellum back here for movement, cerebral cortex really kind of making us more human. Frontal parietal lobe, occipital lobe back here. Um, our brain stem and thalamus and pons and medulla oblongata and all these different things, these structures in here really help define us as beings. But also it can, like I said here, if we really get nuanced in our understanding of what's going on in the brain, we can actually target interventions to work and act in different parts of the brain. So particularly like deep breathing, relaxation, we're allowing this really low part of our brain take control, centering activity here, which then can decrease the function of the cerebral cortex, our like all of our thinking and memories and things that go through our hippocampus and frontal lobe, like that could be causing like anxiety response. If we put this in control and really focus in on really our basic functions, that tends to shut all those other areas down. We've got science to back up what we do. When I started in this field in 1991, my first collegiate psychology class, that wasn't a thing. It was like, yeah, it looks like psychology works, but we can back up now what we're doing by the science. Science shows that it's effective. So it's a cool time to do what we do if we just don't blow our whole world up. All right, so there's certain reflexes. How does the brain develop? When we have certain reflexes when we're born that help aid to our survival, like we cry, the baby tends to seek its mother's face. Its mother's face more familiar, very basic memory. Um, a baby has a rooting and grasping reflex. So rooting would be like trying to suck, to latch on and be able to like feed. If you touch a baby's hand, it closes. It's this grasping reflex. Same thing with the feet. If you stroke the feet, they close up. Um, so yeah, I'd say this footprint is inaccurate because like this would be accurate because like when they press the baby's hand in, you can see how it kind of closed up. The feet tend to close up too when you touch them. So both our feet and our hands have this grasping reflex. Wonder where that came from evolutionarily. So there's rooting, there's gripping, there's toe curling. There's this startle reflex where the babies kind of fly back like this, and then can cry. There's also this gallant reflex where if you stroke like a certain, it looks like they're like fencing. Um, so pay attention to those. I don't think the gallant reflex is on there. Here's a good slide with a lot of these together. You're welcome to read over these to see like what's ingrained. So right when a baby is born, these reflexes are there. So think about, evolutionarily, how did these come about? There's also a swimming reflex. You put a baby in water, they automatically start like moving like this crazy, right? Why? These primitive reflexes are there. There's also a stepping reflex. Look, my baby can walk. Not yet. They're not able to walk. Actually, promoting crawling actually helps coordination. If you promote crawling, don't just start to try to make your baby walk. The natural progression of things isn't to take the baby out of the cart out of your arms, set him down and walk. The natural progression of things over our millennia of being here is put the baby down on their stomach. They start to, roll over. They start to do this and this. They also start to crawl. So much of what OT has learned about human development depends on like handwriting. Handwriting quality is actually dependent upon like, did you crawl a lot as a child? That's why my handwriting sucks. Um, so there's different states of arousal in infants. Please check this out. Not all just sleep. There's my boy again. I can't. I'll have to get like tearful and things. So, anyway, uh, I've mentioned this in the video before, but the basic stuff when you like are born, like what can a baby do mainly? It's like you've got these reflexes, but baby can cry, baby goes to sleep, baby can feed, digest food, right? Baby breathe, hopefully, that's our first sign of life is breath. It's a like it's a girl, it's a boy because the baby's like crying and breathing. I remember that first like moment of my first child's life. It's like, how do they know to breathe? Like how and they practice in the womb a bit and they go get going. So but yeah, crazy. We're wired to breathe when we first come out. So a brain grows a lot like a tree. So the basic stuff here, like down in the brain stem and the let's see here, it'd go like this. So the really basic stuff is online. Movement isn't coordinated yet. Our thoughts definitely aren't coordinated yet. The things that are really like that you're really good neurally down here with breathing, heartbeat, things like that, digestion, like the basic stuff. Movement, coordinated thoughts, memories, all that speech, all of those things that develop are not online. And so what happens is our brain literally grows like a tree. And so we got some sensory things that we can do. Please look over this. Um, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but yeah, sensory capabilities. My wife's really big into like sensory integration because she worked with kids with autism and or still does, and being able to integrate senses is very important in development. And so here's like an example of how our eyesight becomes more acute and more responsive over time. Even at 6 months, look, it's kind of blurry. Like your vision, your visual acuity, kind of like I talked about with the cats, and then that critical period, like your vision develops over time. And so one of the ways to consider like if a baby's like their visual development is this visual cliff. It develops more with increased crawling. And so after you crawl a little bit and you see this like visual cliff, you'll stop crawling. And so kinesthetic learning goes along with vision very clearly. Here's like a very rough like there's like periods of development when things happen. And so you can see within this chart like how things should happen like within normal. Again, these would be normal windows. If your baby doesn't start walking at 10 months, so what? If they're walking at 14 months, sweet. They got it. If they're not standing alone at 10 months, don't freak out. There's a window here, right? So pay attention to those windows. Here's some more windows, like stages of brain development as an infant. So you can see that, our vision develops quite a bit in that first year. Our speech develops over time. One of the most complex things that we do as humans is produce speech. It requires so many different areas of our brain to coordinate together to produce speech. It's so hard. Where it's not a coincidence that we have this massive cerebral. Well, it's not quite this big. Our brain's actually about this big. If you make two fists and put it up to your head, that's about how big your cerebral cortex is. So this is like a massive overrepresentation of how big your brain is. And I have a pretty big head. Like my skull's like bigger than most. But anyway, yeah, dude, this gives you like windows of when things should develop. You can see languages, up to 4, I'd say even past 4. But there's critical periods. This is a cool newsletter. You're welcome to read through that. This talks a lot about, I think, just a video of development, if I remember correctly. Yeah, nothing is coordinating well with YouTube in this at this point. So um, here's a neuron, and so what I want you to think about is each one of our cells, our brain cells, are connected to others in many different places. So each brain cell, this is a super simplification. Each brain cell, these are dendrites. Dendrites receive information. Axons send information. That is a test question. Please be sure that you know that. So an action potential starts here in the nucleus. The nucleus decides to send an action potential down this axon, which is sending a message toward other brain cells, other neurons. And other neurons have things called dendrites that are attached to these terminal buttons. And then that starts another possible chain reaction. So these dendrites are actually receiving signals from other cells, and they're all going to this nucleus. So there are, on average, between 5,000 and 50,000 connections on every brain cell neuron in your head. That is crazy, crazy, crazy complex. So how do neurons work? Let's pause there because I'm going on for quite some time. I don't want this to get too long.